cinnamon buns. They are my favorite. The sugar, the cream cheese, the cinnamon, oh, they are amazing. But I'm a cookie girl. So how does a cookie girl fall in love with a cinnamon roll, cinnamon bun? Well, that's because I put a twist to it and made my own creation that's even heart-shaped. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. Coming up next. Hi, I'm Diette, and welcome to Turtle's Tasty Treats, where we make baking from scratch easy. Today, I'm so excited to share with you my cookie buttered heart-shaped cinnamon buns. Now, these are so yummy, and it includes one of my favorite recipes, cookie butter. Now, if you do not have cookie butter, it's okay. Click here, and I'll show you step by step how you can make your own cookie butter. I also will list the link in the description below. Now to the ingredients that you would need to make your own cinnamon buns. For the cinnamon buns, you would need 1 1/4 cups of milk, 2 1/4 teaspoons of active dry yeast, 1/4 cups of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, 1 egg, 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 3 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. For the filling, you will need a 1/2 cup of butter that will need to be melted, 2 3/3 cups of light brown sugar, and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. To mix my ingredients up, I'll be using my KitchenAid stand mixer fixed with my hook attachment, a large bowl, a whisk, a spatula, a spoon, and I'll be needing my rolling pin. Now my oven, I need to preset that to 350 degrees. To start, I'm going to activate my yeast. So what I'm going to do, I have my milk and I've already warmed it. You don't want it too hot because that will kill the yeast. So I have it nice and warm, and I'm going to go ahead and add my active yeast to my milk. Now I'm going to take my spoon, my 1 teaspoon, and I'm actually going to go into my granulated sugar, and I'm going to place 1 teaspoon of sugar into my yeast. Now taking my little spatula, I'm going to go ahead and mix up the sugar and the active yeast together. Now I'm going to place this aside, let it get nice and foamy. While it's doing its thing, I'm going to go ahead and mix up the other ingredients. Now it's time for the butter. I'm going to go ahead and add the butter to my bowl. Now for my light brown sugar and my granulated sugar, I'm going to go ahead and add that to the bowl now. Let's mix it up. For that added flavor, I'm going to go ahead and add the vanilla extract now. Taking my spatula, I'm going to go ahead and scrape down the sides of my bowl, and I'm getting the bottom as well to make sure all of my ingredients is thoroughly mixed together. Time to add the egg. I like to crack my egg into a separate bowl. So no shells, and if it's a bad egg, none of that gets into my dough. So taking my 1 egg, I'm going to go ahead and place it into my bowl. And then I'm going to mix it up. Taking my spatula again, I'm going to go ahead and again make sure that everything is mixed well together. Now to the dry ingredients. My salt, cinnamon, and nutmeg, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my all-purpose flour. Taking my whisk, I'm going to go ahead and mix it thoroughly well together. Now I believe my yeast is ready. Let me show you what it looks like now. Now that my yeast had time to activate, I'm ready to pour my yeast into my dry ingredients. Now I'm going to transfer my dry ingredients with my yeast into my bowl, a little at a time. Let's mix it up. Now I'm going to allow my dough to mix in my mixer for about 5 minutes. I want my dough to be able to wrap around my dough hook by itself. Taking a little bit of flour, I'm going to go ahead and flour my pastry mat. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn out my dough onto my pastry mat. Now I'm going to knead my dough by hand and roll it up into a nice ball. I know my dough is ready when I'm able to press my finger into my dough and it springs back. Taking a bowl, I'm going to go ahead and butter it up so that my dough doesn't stick into my bowl. Now taking my dough, I'm going to go ahead and place it into my bowl. And I like to put a little butter on top of my dough just so that it doesn't dry out. Now taking some cling wrap, I'm going to go ahead and cover my dough. Now I'm going to place my dough into a nice warm spot and I'm going to let it rise for 2 hours. Now that my dough has rose for 2 hours, it's now time to roll it out. Taking some flour, I'm going to go ahead and flour my pastry mat again. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn out my dough onto my pastry mat. With my rolling pin in hand, I'm going to take some flour and go ahead and spread it onto my rolling pin. I do not want my dough to stick to my rolling pin. Now it's time to get a rolling. I'm going to roll out my dough so it's nice and smooth. As I'm rolling out my dough, I want to try to get a rectangle shape. With my melted butter and my pastry brush, I'm going to go ahead and spread out my melted butter all on my dough. Now taking my cinnamon, I'm going to go ahead and add it to my brown sugar. Taking a spoon, I'm going to go ahead and mix the two together. Now that the two are all mixed together, I'm going to take a handful and begin to sprinkle it onto my dough. Now I just want to smooth out my cinnamon sugar just to make sure all of my dough is fully covered with this sweetness. Now it's time to get the rolling. I'm going to go ahead and begin to pull up my edge of my dough, and I'm just going to flap it over just like this to start my roll. Once I brought the edge over about 1 inch, now I can begin to tightly roll my dough. To cut my cinnamon rolls. Using a serrated knife, I'm going to go ahead and start by first cutting off the ends to make it even. Now that's still a yummy piece. Now I'm ready to cut my cinnamon buns into 1-inch pieces. In order to make sure everything was even, I measured everything out and placed a mark on top of the cinnamon buns. Now I'm going to go back and actually cut those marks all the way down. Now in order to make a heart, I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to go about halfway into cutting halfway down my cinnamon roll on the side. Then I'm going to open it up. And I will have a heart. Then I'm going to pinch the bottom end so that I can really have that heart shape defined. Now my parchment lined baking tray, I'm going to go ahead and place each one of my hearts onto my baking tray. Now that my cinnamon rolls have rose, now it's time to bake them in the oven for 40 minutes. Out of the oven, I'm going to let them cool on my baking tray for 10 minutes. And now it's time to taste our tasty treat. But before we taste them, we need to add a little bit of cookie butter on top. And now it's time to taste our tasty treat. So yummy.
That's good.
It's good? I'll see you in the next one. And subscribe for more.